What do you think attracts people to the show, and why should the German audience watch Mad Men?
Well, I think that anybody should watch the show because it's a good show. What I think attracts people to it is, first of all, it's very stylish. We take a lot of pride in the fact that we try to create a very beautiful environment that's very much like a film, and a lot of attention and care is paid to those elements. As for the attraction for the viewer as well, is we try to tell an interesting story that doesn't necessarily fit into the kind of particular generic television genres. It's not a cop show. It's not a lawyer show. It's not a medical drama or a family drama. It's its own thing. It's a very specific kind of way of telling a story. And if anything, it harkens back to sort of the storytelling on shows like The Sopranos or The Wire, or shows that I think rightfully are praised for their high quality and exciting storytelling. So I think that, I don't know if it's unique to German television audiences, but I hope that it's something that German television audiences will find intriguing and exciting. The fact that it's particular to the United States, I don't think necessarily is detrimental. I think it's an interesting enough time period and fertile enough ground that it resonates internationally.
We love it here, so you're right. How much Don Draper is in Jon Hamm, or how much Jon Hamm is in Don Draper?
Very little, I think. I think those are two very separate entities. But yeah, I very much like playing that character, and I also very much like leaving him at work when I go home. So it's a very rich, very exciting, very complicated character, but those are very often the most fun to play.
When we describe him, we always say he's like the most shiny character in TV right now, but he's also a dark character. He is racist, he's sexist sometimes. How is it to play those traits? You know,
the hope is that you try to play them as real as possible, and I think that you know, what we know about life in this period of time in American culture 50 years ago, some odd years ago, was that these sort of darker elements of people existed, and to ignore them is to be sort of fundamentally dishonest about not only the character but about the story you're telling. Every part of that contributes to creating this world, and especially when you try to create a world that existed not that long ago, but yet still people, our generation and younger generations aren't necessarily familiar with it from the first hand. So I think we did a pretty good job of that.
Doing Don Draper at Mad Men, what surprised you most about the 60s?
I don't think anything really surprised me about the 60s. My father and mother both grew up in the 60s, so I had enough kind of experience from them, at least, of what that. And I was born in 1971, so I'm barely out of that generation as well. But I think what surprised me the most is what people think of as the 60s is really the late 60s and the early 70s, really. That sort of counterculture, free love, hippie kind of Age of Aquarius stuff really only happened in 66, 67, and then kind of carried on through basically until Watergate. And what people don't realize was there's this whole beginning of the 60s that was way more like what people think of the 50s. Very conservative. People, you know, the number one record in the country was Pat Boone and Frank Sinatra. It was like it wasn't always the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and Rolling Stone. Like it wasn't those guys until much later on. So it's interesting that's that moniker, the '60s, has sort of overtaken all of that other stuff.
When Don Draper reads a book, next day on Amazon, the charts go up. Tell me, what do you what do you feel about that? And how does having so much power feel? Don Draper having so much power over our time feel like?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think it's a. First of all, I think anything that gets people to buy books is fantastic. Whether or not they read them, that's another argument. But I think it speaks to the fact that people want to be sort of challenged intellectually and want to learn more about not only my character and our show, but like what was going on back then. Why were these characters turned on by these specific stories and specific books? And I think it's certainly a wonderful compliment that people pay enough attention to the show that they want to buy those books, or they want to sort of find that out. How does it feel to have that much power? I don't think I have that much power. I certainly don't feel like I'm any more powerful than the next person. But it does feel nice that people pay attention. That part is nice.
Can you tell us about your or Don's relationship to Peggy Olson? What kind of dynamic do they have?
They have a very, I think, specific dynamic. I think it's a dynamic that doesn't exist with a lot of people in Don's life. Don is very protective of Peggy in a way. He's also very challenging. He challenges her a lot. He is very sort of unforgiving in a lot of ways, and I think the foundation of all of that is that he knows that people will expect a lot more of Peggy because she's a woman in this particular job, and so she has to work twice as hard to overcome those expectations and to break down people's preconceived notions. Because I think that's the way Don felt at the beginning of his career and the beginning of his life, coming from such a poor upbringing and having all of these preconceptions piled on him. So I think very much he sees a lot of himself in Peggy, and I think that he's justifiably very protective and very proud of her, and wants her to succeed, but wants her also to not succeed by having something handed to her, to succeed by to feel as if she's earned that success through her own hard work.
Both have a lot of secrets also. Are there more to come?
There certainly are a lot of secrets. Are there more to come? I would only imagine that there are. When you start your life by keeping secrets, you generally maintain that, I think, throughout your life. So there probably will be, and that's kind of what makes it fun, some of it.
Mad Men, we have to talk about the clothes, the style. Can you tell us, do the suits change the way you feel? Do you have a different composure, different body language? How does the style of the 60s influence you and your acting?
Well, it's certainly, for the women, that's definitely the case. I mean, they are wearing an awful lot of clothing under their clothing, and it's very constrictive and supportive and architectural in its design. The guys too. I mean, those pants come up very high, and they're very well tailored, and the fabrics are very heavy, and but it's nice. It's a very clean, very modern, very cool look, and it's, I think, kind of interestingly enough, sort of influenced contemporary fashion too. There's been sort of a whole retroactive kind of look at that mid-century sensibility, and that's great. That feels kind of cool to be a part of that.